The silence Clara left behind didn't just haunt the house. It suffocated it, smelling of cold solder and the ozone of 1,000 dead ideas. For 365 days, I treated her workshop like a tomb. A narrow wooden sanctuary where she used to manipulate currents and command lightning. She was an electrical genius, a woman who saw the world in circuits and soul. But after the accident, the lights in my life simply went out. I didn't know that Clara hadn't just been building gadgets in that shed. She had been building a case. I didn't know that the flickering bulbs in our kitchen weren't just signs of an old house, but the frantic heartbeat of a woman trying to warn me from beyond the grave. The truth wasn't buried in a cemetery. It was vibrating behind the drywall, waiting for a spark to ignite a fuse that would burn a corrupt empire to the ground. If you think grief is quiet, you haven't heard the sound of a dead woman's secrets being ripped from the shadows. The first year after Clara died passed in a strange kind of static. Not peaceful, just the kind of heavy void where nothing changes unless you force it to. Her workshop sat behind our home, a weathered wooden building she built with her own hands. It used to glow late into the night while she worked, soldering irons humming and small tools clicking as she navigated the architecture of power. I never understood half of what she built, but she loved that space. After the funeral, I locked the door and left it that way. It wasn't a decision. It was a survival instinct. Every time I reached for the handle, something in the air, a phantom current, stopped me cold. But a year later, the house began to fail. Lights flickered with a rhythmic, desperate pulse. Breakers tripped with violent snaps. I called an electrician named Marcus, a man with calloused hands and a steady gaze. He took one look at the panel and told me the wiring running out to the workshop was a fire hazard. "We need to pull the whole line, Elias," he said. Felt like simple maintenance. Nothing emotional. I was just fixing a house. I was wrong. Marcus arrived early, disappearing into the workshop while I sat inside, pretending to read, trying to ignore the ghost of her laughter. Around noon my phone buzzed. Marcus's voice was tight, stripped of its professional calm. "Elias, you should come out here right now. And come alone." The walk across the yard felt like a mile. When I stepped into the workshop, the air tasted of sawdust and old secrets. A square section of drywall had been surgically cut open near the breaker panel. Marcus stood there, his flashlight beam cutting through the dust. "I didn't want to touch this until you saw it," he whispered. Built directly into the wooden studs of the wall was a small metal lockbox, sealed behind the drywall like a time capsule meant for a different century. Beside it, taped to the interior panel Marcus had removed, was a small brass key. Attached was a strip of yellowing masking tape. My name was written on it in Clara's sharp, decisive handwriting. I froze. She had meant for me to find this, but only when the house or the system started to break. The key turned with a metallic click that echoed like a hammer. Inside were 3 thick notebooks, 2 encrypted flash drives, and a bundle of unsealed envelopes. I opened the first notebook. It wasn't a diary, it was a dossier. It was filled with wiring diagrams, voltage surges, and addresses scattered across the tri-state area. Every single page was a map of failure. Every entry listed the same name: Vanguard Electrical. I looked at our own breaker panel. The Vanguard logo was stamped onto the steel. Marcus noticed. "You see the pattern?" he asked. Clara hadn't been tinkering. She had been hunting. She had discovered a systematic pattern of unsafe shortcuts, cheaper, lethal wiring used by Vanguard to maximize profits on government contracts. She had been documenting the fires before they happened. I opened the first envelope. "Elias," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I ran out of time. The sparks in our walls aren't accidents. They're evidence. I couldn't go to the police yet. Vanguard owns the inspectors. I needed more. I needed the flash drives. The weight of it hit me, the accident that took her life, the electrical fire at the substation where she'd been working. It wasn't a tragedy. It was an assassination. Clara hadn't just died. She had been silenced because she was about to pull the plug on a billion-dollar conspiracy. "The readings she took in these notebooks," Marcus said, leaning over the workbench, "they're perfect. This is enough to trigger a federal audit. This house is wired to burn, Elias. And so is every school and hospital Vanguard touched in the last 5 years." I looked around the workshop. For a year this room had been a place of mourning. Now it was a war room. The tools weren't relics, they were weapons. Clara hadn't left me a memory. She had left me a mission. I closed the notebook, my fingers gripping the leather cover. The quiet was over. The static was gone. She was trying to finish this, I said, my voice finally finding its edge. Marcus nodded, his eyes reflecting the sharp light of the workbench. For the first time in a year, the lights didn't flicker. They burned bright. Clara had provided the spark. Now it was my turn to start the fire. Clara knew that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a live wire. It's a person with nothing left to lose and a notebook full of truth. She died to protect the innocent, and now Elias is making sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain. If you believe that no one is above the law, and you're ready to see Elias take down Vanguard Electrical, then you belong here. Smash that like button to stand with Clara's legacy, and hit subscribe to join our community of truth seekers. Don't let the corruption stay hidden in the walls. Tap the bell icon and I'll see you in the next one. Tell me in the comments. What would you do if you found a secret that could change everything? Let's talk.